Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the president will support Congress's border deal, but also said the president will move forward with declaring a national emergency. CBS News chief congressional correspondent Nancy Cortez is on Capitol Hill. Nancy, what more do we know?
Well, Rena, just a few moments ago, the Senate's Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, came to the floor of the Senate in a hurry. He actually interrupted one of his colleagues, Chuck Grassley, who was speaking at the time, and he said that there's going to be a vote at 3:30, a procedural vote on this border package, but that the president, he had spoken to him, the president will sign it. However, he will also declare a national emergency at the same time in order to seek the funding for his border wall that is not in this package. And interestingly, Leader McConnell, who has thrown cold water in the past on this idea of a national emergency, said that he had told the president that he's going to support that emergency declaration. So it appears that the Republican leader is basically making a trade here. He really wants the president to sign this bill. He wants to avert another partial government shutdown. But in order to win the president's support, he had to tell the president, and then I'll back you when it comes to this national emergency.
So, Nancy, just to be clear, we have, if the president does sign, as is the indication, we will avert a government shutdown. But what does the invoking a national emergency declaration mean, moving this through Congress, and what does it mean as far as funding?
It enables the president to basically go around Congress and get funding to help him combat something that he says is a national emergency. Now, that is going to create conflicts of its own. That is not going to be an easy process. Democrats have already said that they are going to file legal challenges if the president tries to do that, because they say this is not like a national disaster. This is not an earthquake or a hurricane or fires. They don't agree with the president that there is any national emergency. They say that illegal border crossings are near their lowest levels in 20 years. So they believe that the president would be abusing his authority, and they want to try and hold up the process in court. So that's the reason that you even have some Republicans who don't like the idea and who have been urging the president not to declare a national emergency. But as much as these Republicans don't like a national emergency, they like partial government shutdown, a second one even less. And so if they have to choose, they're going to try to keep the government open, let the president declare a national emergency if he wants, with the knowledge that it'll probably get held up in the courts for years.
So looking ahead right now, Nancy, at 3:30, we are expecting that vote. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you see this afternoon playing out?
I anticipate that this spending bill is going to get overwhelming support in the Senate. I actually haven't spoken to a single senator yet who says they're going to vote against it. And it'll have to go up for a couple of votes in the Senate. Once it passes, which we expect it will then go up for a vote in the House sometime this evening. Most House members have been attending one of two funerals for former colleagues today, and so they were not available to vote earlier in the day. But we anticipate that this bill will pass overwhelmingly in the House as well, and then the president just needs to sign it before 11:59 p.m. on Friday night to avert another partial government shutdown.
And going back to the president's decision potentially to declare a national emergency, if he does do that, you were talking a little bit about how this would be held up in the courts. So getting that money for the wall, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen in the next few months. Is that assessment right?
Well, he has a number of different options. For example, Republicans believe that there are some pots of money at the Defense Department that the president would be able to dip into, even without declaring a national emergency, to get some of that funding. A lot of this hasn't really been tested before, which is why there's so much confusion about how this would actually work. But they're urging him to try to go to the Department of Defense first. And they're worried that if he does declare a national emergency, that he will funds that were already dedicated to Hurricane Harvey, cleanup and that kind of thing, which is something that tech lawmakers, for example, would not be very happy about.
Nancy, we know Mitch McConnell has served in the Senate. You probably know the exact number, but for quite some time at this point. Is he worried at all about the precedent that this could set, about the president going and declaring this national emergency the next time there is a Democratic president in the White House?
Yes, a lot of Republicans are worried about that. They worry that, basically, if the next president is a Democrat and they decide that climate change is a national emergency or gun violence is a national emergency, that those presidents would then be emboldened to declare states of emergency themselves, and that would be something that the Republicans wouldn't like. Beyond that, there are a lot of Republicans who sort of feel the same way that Democrats do, which is that, sure, it's a problem whenever you have people crossing the border illegally, but that it doesn't rise to the level of a national emergency. But there are certainly many Republicans who feel differently. And just today, a group of House Republicans who are in the very conservative House Freedom Caucus told the president that this deal is a bad deal because it doesn't give him all the money that he wants for a border wall, and they encouraged him to declare a national emergency right away in order to get that funding.
And at this point, what are you hearing from Democrats about the president's decision to potentially declare this national emergency?
Well, it only happened a few minutes ago, so
right. Fair enough. Fair enough. You're good, but not that good. You don't have telepathic capabilities. I know. I understand.
But I will say that they've had plenty to say up until now about what they think of it, and they think that it is a terrible idea. And beyond that, they say, hey, when President Obama was in office, a lot of their Republican colleagues would frequently rail against his use of executive authority, and they felt that he overstepped his bounds. And in this case, they say, now Republicans seem to not have a problem with executive authority at all. But we'll hear more from Nancy Pelosi very shortly. She's set to have her weekly press conference at 3:30 Eastern time, and I'm sure she'll have a lot to say about this idea.
You're absolutely right. We look forward to hearing from her as well. CBS News Chief Congressional Correspondent Nancy Cordes. Nancy, we know you got a lot more reporting to do. We'll check back with you throughout this afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
You got it.